Welcome to the 6-5 Summit. I'm Fred McClymans, and on behalf of the teams here at Futurum Research and More Insights and Strategy, thanks for joining us today. In this fireside chat, Futurum's Daniel Newman talks with Stephanie Nashawaty, Chief Customer Innovation Officer of SAP North America. Their topic? Navigating the path to becoming an intelligent enterprise. As a female tech exec, Stephanie has a unique perspective on how diverse teams can improve the bottom line and help organizations achieve their overall goals. I think you're going to enjoy this one. Let's go.
Stephanie, it is so nice to have you here at the 6-5 Summit. How are you doing today?
Doing great, doing great. It's nice to see you again, Daniel.
Yeah, it is great. Last time we did this, it was at Sapphire, and I think we had so much fun. We said, why not do it again? We'll bring you back, and I joined your event. You can join our event, and we can have some fun. But I'm excited about this conversation. It's a topic I think I'd like to draw a lot more attention to: leadership, diversity, and of course the intelligent enterprise. Taking this all together. This is a quick moving online event, so I'm not going to give you a lot of time to deal with the small talk. We're going to jump right in. I want to talk to you about your career in the tech industry. You've done a lot, you've achieved a lot, but you did it in a short amount of time. But I'd love for you to start at the beginning. Just talk a little bit about how you got into leadership in tech and how you were able to accomplish that so quickly.
I appreciate that, Daniel, and thank you for giving me the chance to talk about it, because you asking me to do that gave me some time to think about it. And I don't think in our lives we stop and pause and think about those early days. So I really enjoyed it. And, I looked back, I moved to Palo Alto in Silicon Valley, and I joined Oracle back in 1996. I transitioned from the financial services industry, and the excitement and the energy in Silicon Valley at that time was just palpable. And I was thinking about it. In those days is when, Al Gore and Bill Clinton were wiring up California schools for something called the net. AOL had just gone public. There were many emerging players in the tech boom, and just a crazy time. I probably didn't realize at the time how lucky I was to be in Silicon Valley. But I think I was really fortunate to start my career with a company like Oracle, which has really managed to dominate its core business, and it's expanded into new business. It's acquired several of its rivals, the Sun, Siebel, PeopleSoft, NetSuite. And I look back and I think that many of the companies that dominated that 101 highway from San Jose to San Francisco, many of them aren't around anymore. And for me, I look back and I think about what were the decisions or events that caused some companies to really succeed, some blew up or got swallowed up. And, I think about Sybase or Informix, companies that were our big competitors that, aren't around as we knew it. I also think about things, Daniel, like Mark Benioff left Oracle the year I was there to go form Salesforce.com. And I remember when he left, many of my Oracle peers and people were following him. But Mark, you probably know the story. Mark went around hat in hand to all the VCs in Silicon Valley and couldn't get any funding. People didn't believe in CRM or cloud computing or any of that. And everyone thought Larry would swallow up Mark and he'd be a dismal failure. And then today, Salesforce.com has a valuation of $168 billion. So you think about those things were happening. And for me, as a young woman, new to tech, it was really about picking the right horse, as companies were growing or blowing up. And it was also a really interesting time to be a woman in tech. In those early days, women weren't allowed on the corporate jet. There were no female founders. I remember succinctly having conversations with my peers about, could we have pictures of our babies or our families in our offices? Or would you not seem dedicated to your job if you were distracted by being a mom? And in prep for this session today, I was telling my daughters that story. They're college-age women, and they literally didn't believe me that I wouldn't have pictures of my daughter in my office because it would make me, less of a professional. So, back then, Daniel, I was a new mom, and concepts like on-site daycare, flexible work schedules hadn't really emerged. And we all worked crazy hours and our jobs were everything. And really, really a crazy time to live in Silicon Valley. And I laugh because I think about the housing prices back there, and they were crazy. And of course, now I'm wishing I had some money to put into Salesforce.com or buy property in Silicon Valley. So a crazy start for sure. But I definitely had an accelerated start starting at Oracle.
Yeah, if we all had that 2020 hindsight, we'd have made all the best investments, bought all the right stocks, picked all the right paths. But it sounds like despite, not maybe making enough, buying enough real estate in Redwood City in your 20s, sounds like you did a lot of things well. I did want to just follow up quickly because you ended up in tech and you ended up in Palo Alto. But, with all the things considered, what kind of drove you to tech? Because when you got in, it wasn't like it is today. It wasn't, now it's the cool place to be. But, there was still, I still think about kind of the AV geeks and the nerds, and, it wasn't always the cool place to be.
I think the big crossroad thing for me was one of my first managers. When I was 25 years old, I became a vice president. I was asked to lead a team of 250 employees. I had a $30 million P&L, and you look back and I go, geez, I barely give my kids $1,000, let alone, a P&L like that. But it was a crazy time, and we were all really boxing above our weight class. We were being asked to do things in that time because there was such a shortage of talent. And I was really fortunate, Daniel. My first real manager was a woman by the name of Liz Weissman. And she has gone on to be a best-selling author of two really important business books, the first being The Multipliers and the second being Rookie Smarts. And I share it with you because I think the way she led and mentored me is really reflected in these books. And the premise of The Multipliers is, rather than focusing on your own intellect and trying to be the smartest person in the room, that you learn how to harness the intelligence of your teams. And sometimes when you think about it, smart groups always make better decisions than smart individuals. And I think for me, that was such a gift because I didn't have all the answers back in those days. I barely knew the questions, but I at least had a management approach from Liz, which was about put bright people around you and let them go and be a facilitator, not the one who has to have the answers. And Rookie Smarts, is an interesting book because it's about how learning beats knowing. Right? So it's about, in a modern company, knowledge gets stale, but learning is continuous. So Liz really encouraged me not to pretend I knew everything, but to be committed to being willing to learn everything. So when I think about how fortunate I was to have a leader like her with really such a great philosophy, take a chance on me and grow me, that for me was the big difference. And for me as a leader now, I really try to pay it forward. And I also took chances on many young people throughout the course of my 25-year career, especially women. And I look back and some of the things I'm the most proud of are, I had an admin who went on to be a training manager at Google. I had another EA who is now the CEO of her own company. And by encouraging women that you don't have to have all the answers, just be willing to learn, has really kind of been what I've tried to do in my career. And it's given me an ecosystem that I love in the technology business.
Yeah, I think that's fascinating. I wrote my first book in my mid-20s. It was called Millennial CEO. And I think that was one of the biggest learnings that I had as well was, I was in my 20s. I was a CEO. The average age of an employee in the company was over 50. It was only a few hundred employees. It was a smaller business, but it was still really big for me at that time. And I remember in the first few months, I always felt like every meeting I had to be the person with all the answers. I didn't really start having any success leading until I realized that the people around me knew a lot, and in some cases knew a lot more than me, and started to actually harness that. And I think that's great because I think a lot of people, it's an insecurity thing or something that we always feel the need to know everything. We can't ever respond to something and be like, you know what, I don't know. But we're actually in the most powerful technological economy to learn things instantly. And it's almost better to just pause and go read something and go learn something and go listen. I love that. So, and you sort of got into my second question, but I just want to, for the sake of the audience, to sort of have you put your exacts on this. But when you describe your leadership style today, so with all the influence of Liz, and now having 25 years of this under your belt of being a vice president, now a chief customer innovation officer for major global tech companies, how do you define your style? How do you, summate that in a few words?
Yeah, well, thank you for asking. I guess I would love to think of myself as very collaborative and also pragmatic. And I always tell people that I strongly believe in any new role you take on, you should have enough headroom. And by headroom, I mean you should feel comfortable with maybe 70% of the job and have 30% of it be new and challenging. And with 25 years experience in tech, I want to make sure I don't lose that rookie smart concept and that I balance knowledge with learning and growing. And frankly, the beauty of SAP is that with our portfolio, our industries, our products, all of that, I get to continually learn here. Every day there's something I don't know and something to learn. So I think collaborative, pragmatic, and I'm very fortunate now to lead a diverse team of senior leaders. More than 50% of my leadership team is women, which is still unusual in the tech industry. So, I really try to surround myself with the right people who have unique skills and perspectives and really shared values. And I think my job is to kind of set that vision, advocate, get resources and support, but really let people run. And I found that people who feel valued and appreciated really, really perform. So I feel very, very lucky.
Yeah, it makes me think about what Stephen Covey, seek first to understand, then to be understood. Yeah. I think that was, I listened to that book on tape, read that book, listened to it again, and there were so many good parts of that, but I certainly just remember that particular phrase. Because I think, like I said, so many of us as leaders, that's the one thing we always kind of fall on is we confuse leading and knowing and managing. And, wanting to be empathic shouldn't be something we strive for. It should be something that deep down that we have to be great leaders. So, and if you don't, then you need to strive for it for sure. So you now run a position at SAP that's customer focused. Of course, you have a team, but you're really helping the company and creating its messaging and fluidity in terms of these big transformations. So this approach that you take with people, how do you sort of push it outward? So, now you have these relationships in the market that they don't work for you. They don't have to do what they tell you. And of course, your employees don't really either, but these people certainly do not have to do it. Now you're trying to influence, talk about a book, win friends, influence people. Well, you need to sort of do this. How are you taking that style and translating it outward to customers to really help them deal? Because we are in a period now where transformation is more important than ever, and it's happening even faster now than even 5 months ago.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And I think, you've hit on the right words. I think coming from a place of empathy and deep understanding is even more critical when working with our customers. And, I always try to keep in mind, Daniel, that our customers are people. They're moms, they're dads, they're breadwinners for their families. And when they make a decision to drive significant change and transformation in their organization, or when they spend millions of dollars with a software partner, they're doing that at some significant risk to themselves if those changes that they champion don't realize, ultimate value for the company. And when you think about with a CIO, the average tenure is about 4 years. I just think my entire job is to make my customers successful. I mean, that's what I'm here to do. And I laugh when I think of the early days in my careers when we were always taught how to overcome objections. And as I've aged, I realized objections are questions. It's customers looking for a deeper understanding of what works, what doesn't, what are the risks, how are you different than your competitors? And I think understanding and listening and answering the questions is a good decision, and being able to explain why things are a good decision for their business. That's what I view my role as. I'm a trusted advisor to my clients. And when you consider that SAP has over 310 major products, we have thousands of SKUs, I barely understand all of our product offerings. How do I expect my customers to? Because guess what? They're not just talking to me. They're talking to hundreds of software vendors. So I view my real role as a translation layer between what my company can do for them and really an honesty layer. And given my experience with multiple software vendors, I think I have a pretty good job to explain where our products pick up and leave off versus our competitors. And I always do that, really technology agnostic, saying, how is this customer most successful? And where those are SAP solutions, you pop them in. Where they're not, you don't. So I think doing that and having successful customers has been kind of the key for me. And it's my biggest asset I have other than my network of, people I work with. I know that's a long answer, but that's just as honest as I can be.
No, I think that's great. I mean, I always think about a couple of the key learnings and experiences that I've had, and you're pointing to them so well, is that we've come to an age where almost brutal honesty in your sales process has become more important than ever before, meaning what you can really deliver, because your weaknesses and gaps are always going to be found out. And thanks to technology and rapid proliferation of data, we find our flaws faster. And the second thing I always say is great business relationships are typically found in the foxhole, or, that's and ERP and CRM and these technologies at SAP, and obviously you guys have moved well beyond just those things, but those are some of the most complex deployments on the planet. And anyone that tells you that their product is easy is lying to you. I don't care what offering it is. I don't care if it's pure cloud. I don't care if it's on-prem. It is complex. And what I'm saying is the chance to build a really meaningful, tight structure between you and these customers happens when you go through the challenges of deployment. So I love everything you're saying. I think it's just one of those things. I think some people want to fight it. They want to oversell. And in the end, I think you can't do that.
You said it exactly right. I will tell you, some of my best relationships are with clients where I said, my technology doesn't do that now, and it ain't going to do it in 3 years. So you should build that yourself. And when you have that level of dialogue, they go, okay, now I actually believe that it does the other things you said it did. So I think that is a really, really big key. So I do think that's the parallel with how you treat people internally, is just kind of honesty and with transparency. It's kind of the only gear I have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's great. Now, with all the work you're doing with customers and leading your team within the organization, I wanted to talk about women in tech real quick. I mean, this is something, I have 2 older daughters. One's one's just leaving off for college. Wow, what an interesting time. I'm really trying to influence them to follow their dreams and go to whatever business they want. My oldest is talking about pursuing an MD. My younger one likes the business I'm in, tech. But tech isn't always the most friendly. As you kind of said, it was interesting being a woman in tech. Some of your anecdotes about, your pictures in the office, or just watching sort of equality pays, gender equality and pay, gender roles on the boards of big tech and even of smaller tech companies, of Silicon Valley, of startup companies. There's so much going on, but you're working with all these companies. Are you seeing movement? Is it getting better as you see it? Being a bit of a pioneer yourself. Isn't always easy, but have you, sort of paving the way? Do you feel that you sort of have, and are you really starting to see some meaningful movement in terms of the women in tech and the advancement of their interests?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. And I guess the answer is right behind me. And that's a painting of my 2 daughters. That's what's important to me. So I didn't even think about that, but the truth is that's something we would never shy away with. So I think your daughters and mine are entering a world where I don't want to say easier because they're going to have different challenges, but in that area, I think what people have come to realize is that diverse teams drive better outcomes, full stop. They just do. By definition, when you approach a problem from multiple vantage points and you debate it vigorously, the eventual outcome is more resilient. It just is, because you've thought about it. You've thought about the what ifs, the what nots. So whether it's gender diversity, racial diversity, age diversity, high functioning teams are best made up when people who solve and approach problems differently show up together. And, not to, SAP brag, but I think we've had targets around, 30% women by 2022. We're well on pace for that. We're all about, bringing in, millennial talent, having fresh perspectives. And one of the reasons I love being here is I think that I don't always agree with everyone I work with, but I agree with our outcomes. Because we get to really good results here at SAP, and being part of a global company, I feel very, very fortunate. And setting targets, I do think, is important, because you have to inspect what you expect. If you say we want to hire women or represented minorities, you need to set that as a company goal and go after it. So I know your question was specifically around gender equality. I think it's better for women, and it's not because of targets. It's because I think that men and women have realized the outcomes are better. And at the end of the day, we're all in the business of making money. And when companies drive more revenue with diverse teams, they're all about diversity.
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that, because we always talk about the culture of digital transformation, and this sort of pivots. But when a company's culture is deeply committed to change with technology, meaning it truly believes in it, it tends to happen very organically, and it tends to succeed. I think it's a very similar thing when you talk about transformation of personnel, of diversity, of staff, of equality too. When it's quota driven, now again, quotas help. It gets done because it's an objective. But I think at some point, people like yourself that lead teams just realize it works better. And it doesn't become like I got to hit this number. It becomes like, I really want this because it works. And I've seen it. And my experience says it works. And, I really think that's kind of the big global, discussion that we're having right now is how do we move on from this standpoint of having it be a checks and balances to really realizing the power of this within so many organizations, and that this level of diversity can really bring qualities to companies, to teams, to product development, to marketing communications teams. And I will say I've worked with SAP for a number of years, and I've always felt there's been a lot of diversity. I've certainly seen that with the teams that I've worked with, and I think it's going to continue to improve, and I think it's something we can continue to work on improving as an industry too. So hopefully the discussion keeps going, and we see a material, meaningful improvement that lasts beyond sort of the media cycle that we're in right now.
Yeah, good point.
Yes. So let me take this home. We've gone through sort of diversity and leadership and career and how you got there. We've talked a little bit about how you interact with customers, but we've got this this next phase of transformation that I alluded to earlier. And SAP affectionately calls it the intelligent enterprise. And I think that's a great way to explain it. It's maybe better than digital transformation. And having written multiple books on digital transformation, it's hard for me to acknowledge that. But I will say, I think
we're growing and changing.
It encompasses something deeper than just tech. This is really an intelligent enterprise, has more to do with people, humanity, technology, bringing this all together. But I would love for you to share with our audience your advice, because you've worked with lots of companies. What should these companies be thinking about as they're trying to become intelligent enterprises of the future?
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. And I think when we say intelligent enterprise, that's all about customer and employee experiences and having that data, kind of connecting that back office operational data with that, from finance or manufacturing, with your front office experience data, so you can make operational decisions to improve those customers and employee experience. And I guess the way I think about it is, if you think about data breaking down silos in organizations. So now the finance team, knows what's happening in the HR side of the business, or the supply chain team knows there's an issue in a regional store. Understanding that, and you alluded to this before, it's important that you know what's wrong with your company before your competitors do, that you really have those insights in your org and you can react. So having that data and a mindset that's a non-defensive ability to assess, your company and your organization is really important. So the parallel I draw is that what I would say, if you're building an intelligent enterprise, is listen to the data. And understanding the data and being able to respond. And then you think about, on a personal level, when you communicate and you understand and you really have a deep level of a relationship, you can break down organizational silos within companies. So listen to the people. So I think an intelligent enterprise, an intelligent leader, you listen to the data and you listen to the people. And I think having a technology backbone that allows that is what the intelligent enterprise is.
Yeah, it's a great answer, and it was a lot simpler. I think you could probably spend hours trying to define it and explain it. So, being able to make, what do they say? The ultimate elegance is simplicity, and being able to quickly explain. So, Stephanie, I really want to say at this point, thank you so much for taking the time, for joining us here at the 6.5 Summit, and for being willing to kind of go off the script, get a little bit more personal. It's not easy for everybody. It's not. For a lot of us, talking about our careers, in our personal work achievements and failure, the most easy thing to broach. Our products, services, that's always easy. And by the way, for a lot of people, that's not even nearly as interesting. But your story, very interesting, and hopefully very inspirational out there for people that are listening, for young women that are looking to aspire in technology, and also for all of the conversations that we're having about equality, about diversity, and about what the tech industry can do. Because I think the tech industry needs to be a bellwether. We're the most looked up to industry, arguably, in the world. People that have been staying at home for the last 3 or 4 months have been doing it and only continue to smile in a lot of cases because of technology and the things that technology has been able to enable. Your story is very exciting. And again, thank you so much, Stephanie.
Well, thanks for having me and letting me take a trip down memory lane. And we could do a call about my failures, but we'd need longer than this session, I think, because there's been many along the way, I can assure you. So thank you for listening, and thanks for having me, and good luck with the rest of the summit.
Absolutely. And thanks everybody out there for tuning into this one. Join us back in the hub of the 6.5 Summit. Check out all the other sessions, and hopefully see you in another one really soon.